BFM 89.9. Good morning, I'm Nadia Hassan, and this is Morning Headlines. So we actually have quite an eclectic group of stories that came up today, as Sharad pointed out earlier in the day. But all the Malay papers are still concentrating on the hunt for MH370. I like Berita Harian's piece because they actually go MH370 di sini. And where is actually di sini? Can you actually see? I have no idea. Because you see, the graphic kind of points it at some random spot in the ocean, which, I mean, as much as you try to get coordinates or whatever, but in terms of visuals, it doesn't make sense. I could say it's here and it probably wouldn't really matter. But the fact is, they are triangulating it based on the 3 ping signals. Basically, they said that the boxes have given enough of a signal, although there is worries that it could get weaker because the battery might run out. But within it, they've actually begun to triangulate an area, and from that, you can actually at least hopefully get closer to the end of this mystery. Although again, I reiterate that this particular graphic doesn't really tell you much in particular. Utosan also does that as well, talking about pictures of the ocean, saying it's, and the thing is, they put up that sah isyarat kotak hitam. Basically, it is a black box signal. You know why they actually had to do this? Was because I read on CNN that they actually got a black box expert to say that the noise that they picked up on the radar is actually consistent with a black box. And they pointed out as to reasons why it might not be. They do point out that the ocean is actually very, very noisy. You have a lot of noise from a lot of other things, maybe sometimes passing marine animals even, and that might sometimes sort of distort the sound of the black box. So they do this, the black box. Now they just have to try and find it. There was even a little piece on CNN's story about how the equipment that originally picked up the pings was actually meant for shallow water, not deep. Because of that, you can have some distortion, but at least now you can sort of see that this is the biggest ray of hope that you've seen, and hopefully something will come within days. Actually, a lot of people say probably it's going to be days, but whether it's going to be weeks is another problem entirely. Well, talking about CNN and talking about the States, CNR actually goes AS as in not as, but Amerika Syarikat jawab theory Diego Garcia. For this is actually one for the conspiracy theorists, namely that a lot of people were saying that the plane had been landed in a place called Diego Garcia, which is a little strip of island which has American kind of presence. It's not really a military base per se, but it does have an installation there. And the conspiracy theory, if you've been reading Facebook, and in fact, quite frankly, you can't really ignore it, that the plane was hijacked, it was landed there, they were negotiating with people, all of these because you still have yet to find the wreckage in it. But you know what's interesting about Diego Garcia is the fact that there's also been allegations that there's a bit Guantanamo issue about it, because there has been prisoners brought there and asked questions or interrogations. So that's why that particular issue sort of cropped up. Until actually the plane is found, however, all is speculation, all is conspiracy theory, all is a plot of a Hollywood novel at this point in time. Moving on to the next big topic, of course, which has taken everybody, especially if you haven't taken a shower recently or can't take a shower recently, namely that the water crisis. Namely, it's worse than 1998. Now, we were talking about it earlier and whether or not anybody can remember the 98 crisis. I actually couldn't. I don't know if they had it in Johor, but clearly I can't remember. But they say it's worse. And they said that this is basically what's happening is it's Malaysia's worst water crisis, surpassing 1998 when Klang Valley folk had to suffer 6 months of rationing. So when they say something like that, you kind of know that it means more than 6 months, which is actually quite bad. A couple of months is already driving everybody sort of bonkers. There are only 80 days left. 80 days left to the critical stage, and it only be reprieved if the state's 2 major dams get as much rainfall this month as they do in November, which is one of the wettest months. If you actually go inside and look at the stories, basically they say that only 1 month of heavy rain can save the day, according to Luas. As we were also mentioning that this kind of seems a bit biblical, doesn't it? 1 month of continuous rain. Saying that we will never know that movie, mostly because it's been banned, so we all have to fly down to Singapore to kind of watch it. And I think Malay Mail also has a very interesting spot. Malay Mail is doing double duty. I have to give it to the Malay Mail's layout, guys, because they're using one picture but for 2 stories. You got to talk about efficiency. It's a water fest in Thailand. Basically, they're talking about the Songkran festival and washing all the elephants, but not so in the Klang Valley. So that's one way of segueing into another story, but using the same kind of graphic. Hey, I got to give it to them. It's not a bad way of doing it. But what's more interesting for the Malay Mail is this. Then I think somebody is always going to be very interested in the fact about enough of wasting people's money. It talks about about the Auditor General's report, which originally was only supposed to come out once a year. Now it's apparently coming out 3 times a year. So when you have it more spread, the people can sort of, instead of having the report released once a year and having people rage for a month, now you release it at gradual points of the year, and then the rage will be consistent. And good thing for consistent rage, because it's quite true. Enough of wasting people's money. There's been a lot of questions about uniforms and sneakers, and even clocks is how much you spend. So the Auditor General report published on April 7 revealed how ministries and government agencies embarked on million ringgit projects but failed to achieve yet one of its objectives. Doesn't this sound extremely familiar? Talking a lot about grand plans, but implementation remains the key. And the thing I wonder is whether releasing the report 3 times a year would actually help, that people will still put enough pressure so we'll stop having reports such as this. The Sun goes a bit more on the law and order SVU route, as I call it, talking about a 6-year-old who's abducted. Basically, because the story's been a bit mixed, the Muslim relative of a 6-year-old Hindu boy handed over to his mother by the High Court after a protracted custody issue is believed to have kidnapped the child from his house in Jelebu early yesterday. And you have it complete with grieving mother together holding, they used to hold photos, now they're holding tablets of the pictures. I mean, it's a very sad issue, but one would actually wonder why you would have this as a front page news. And I kind of talked to Sharad this morning and I said, it's mostly because this kind of thing speaks to the consciousness. Is this what people want to listen to? It's why Star also goes the law and order SVU route. It tugs. It's a way of actually talking about issues without really talking about them. So why do you think this is newsworthy? Is it to sell papers? Hey, some people might actually disagree with me. Actually, the more interesting news I found on this was actually the North Korea official executed with flamethrower. It's actually continuing the line of another round of brutal purges, according to South Korean media reports. Flamethrowers, really? The country's so poor it can barely finish anything, and it can describe by flamethrower. Surely that's got to be really extravagant. I mean, how are they going to buy the gas? Seriously. And then the other little sort of entertainment piece, I'm sure that Sharad probably won't really buy it. It's like talking about superhero's dilemma, where they actually have an interview with Chris Evans from Captain America. He of perfect cheekbones and really, really big pecs. He talks about how he wants to not just be a superhero, but direct. Hey, it's a great aspiration, but a nice little picture for the morning to take away the taste of petrol from the flamethrowers. Finally, we end with Metro with a frankly really, really weird headline talking about Air Mayat Ubat Rindu. They talk about how people basically take water from anything from people who have recently passed away, bathing water, they basically then use it as like a panacea on various things. And yeah, I don't think you need to actually impose anything else on that. Seriously, of all things to put on the morning. And funnily enough, for the news for MH370, it comes right underneath, squeeze here after somebody who got hit by a goal. So you can see where Metro's priorities are. And our word of the day today is panawa, basically panacea, way of medicating yourself. But please, not in dead people's bath water. I know as bad as the water situation is, it can't be that bad. Anyway, that's it for today. Hopefully tomorrow brings more enlightenment on both the issues of water and MH370 and less about dead people's body fluids. I'm Nadia Hassan, and this has been Morning Headlines for BFM 89.9.